welcome back to another episode of Beyond the To-Do List. I'm Eric Fisher, and this is the show where I talk to the people behind the productivity, where we don't just talk about becoming more effective and efficient, but also about doing work with meaning and purpose. This week's conversation is with Mystie Winckler of Simplified Organization, and one of the coolest ideas that I've heard of in a long time is contained in this episode. We talk about the idea, not just about getting organized, ordering your tasks and choosing the right ones, but we talk about getting organized in terms of your attitude. Organizing an attitude? I know, right? I had never heard of that. I'm glad I did. Before we get into that conversation, I wanted to say thank you to The Art of Charm podcast for supporting this podcast. The Art of Charm podcast, it's an iTunes Top 50 podcast. It's a personal growth show that isn't boring. You deserve an extraordinary life. Go to theartofcharmpodcast.com or find The Art of Charm in iTunes or Stitcher and start taking your life to the next level. This week I get to talk with Mystie Winckler. Welcome to the show.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
So I get this impression that as a homeschooling mom with 5 kids, that
Yep.
a lot of your organizational and productivity methods have been born out of necessity. Is that right?
That is right.
Can you talk a little bit about how you discovered that necessity?
Well, actually, my love of organizational productivity type stuff actually started in high school.
Oh, good.
So before I really needed it. But I wanted to get out of speech class. I was actually taking classes at the community college while I was in high school working for an AA. And I hated speaking in front of people, which is funny because here I am with a microphone.
Right.
But I did not want to talk in front of people at all. And so I heard that there was a speech class where you didn't have to make speeches. So I signed up for that class, and that teacher totally ditched the textbook he was supposed to use. And the whole course was on Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
Oh, wow.
So it was actually a really great class. And that I really enjoyed it. And that kind of started me on, I really like this book. This is kind of my thing. And I didn't really read more about, I discovered getting things done. Then I think I had 1 or 2 kids when I think I saw it on someone's shelf or the library. I don't remember how I found it, but the title sounded perfect because I wanted to get things done. So I read that and incorporated a few things and set it aside and forgot about it. Then I had 3 kids and felt very overwhelmed. My husband was working out of town a lot, and I think I had bought it. So the book was on my shelf, and I saw it sitting there, the Getting Things Done, and I reread it and thought, oh my goodness, all my good habits came from that first time that I read about it, but I forgot this is where they came from. So I took copious notes. I was already blogging, so I started blogging through it and had other women asking questions. And so that's when it really, I started really trying to apply most of that productivity stuff is applied for the business world. And so it was a really kind of fun, interesting project to me to take all this stuff that's meant for offices and people getting phone calls and business projects and applying it toward mom at home with kids and laundry and meals without making the house a business or feeling corporate.
Right. Have you read the updated version of the book yet?
I haven't yet. No, I still need to get that.
Okay, because that's kind of David Allen's new thing, or at least his thing that he's believed all along, but didn't quite, tactfully put out there. Is originally it was suit and tie in business mode, but it really was supposed to be for anybody. And so finally, people are like, and a lot of people out there have adapted it for everyday life, and like you have. But it helps to go through it again with him having worded the things differently.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, I've listened to some of his, he's been on your podcast and others. And yeah, it was really interesting to hear him tackle more of those different areas of life.
So at what point did you decide, okay, was it always simplified organization, the blog, or were you blogging in a different format before this?
At first I had just a personal mom blog that wasn't, old school blog. And then right now I actually have 3 blogs, which is out of control, but I like to keep things separate. So I have a homeschooling and homemaking blog that's simply convivial. My first ebook was Simplified Dinners, and that's at simplifiedpantry.com. But then Simplified Organization, I really wanted to tackle only the organization side of things without mixing it with the homeschooling and that sort of thing. So it just applied to more women. And so I wanted to keep it separate. And I started writing I thought it was going to be an ebook, and it turned into a online course on simplified organization, kind of taking a lot of those insights from getting things done and other places and working them into, building these habits of productivity, but also just our attitudes and how we handle life as we're going along trying to do what we're supposed to be doing.
Yeah. Well, so you mentioned attitude, and that's the thing I think that really caught my attention the most was using this phrase. You were using this phrase called an organized attitude. And
yes.
I would love for you to explain that, and let's talk about that a bit.
Yeah, I first saw that phrase used by someone else it was a mothering book that I was reading, and it was just a little throwaway line in the introduction. She said, my house can be falling apart, all of this, but as long as my attitude is organized, that's what mattered. I'm like, well, you can't just say that and then change the subject. What does that even mean? And you can't say that's the most important thing and then not tell me what it means. So I started thinking about that and mulling that over a lot. I think that was before my last one was born. And I just started seeing that, thinking about what does that mean and how can I apply that? And
so by attitude, a lot of people would have varying degrees of definition on what that word itself means, just the word attitude. And some would say, well, it's your perspective. Others would say it's how I feel, it's my emotions, or a mixture of those two things. What is your perspective? What's your attitude on your attitude? I guess.
Yeah, I think of it as kind of your mindset, your perspective, how you interpret what's going on in your life. So, inside our own heads, we have this story that we're telling ourselves as we go along, and we're interpreting what's happening and fitting it in. Like one of my bad stories is where, I'm doing the housework and it feels like I'm playing whack-a-mole. So, I'm just doing one thing while another thing's falling apart. So I try to attack that, but another thing's falling apart. And so, I feel like I'm just playing this really frustrating game I'm never going to win, and everything's just jumping out at me, leering at me. So that's a bad story, and it's not true. It's not a good story. I'm handling what's coming at me and what's most important, and there is always going to be stuff to do, but that's okay. That is normal. And so if I can shift and get myself out of telling myself this bad interpretation of what's going on and say, well, I'm doing a lot more than I used to. And I've always kind of felt this way as things are piling up, but, I'll get on top of it again. There's a time for things to fall apart, and there's a time to get back on top of it again. And so it's just kind of taking a step back and getting a little perspective and changing the way that I interpret what's going on.
Interesting. So in your example, the whack-a-mole situation, the feeling that it's like whack-a-mole is kind of an emotional response. but your attitude or your organized attitude is the truth, or you taking time to remember the truth about what
And
the
yes,
real
yeah,
perspective of the
exactly.
situation is. Okay.
Yeah,
Got
so
it.
you get the emotions and you can't stop those from coming. And you feel these certain ways, and that is your attitude. And so organizing it is taking that time to step back and think about it and realize what you're thinking and say, is that really what I believe? No, it's not. So I need to change towards what I believe and away from this just emotional reaction. So it's kind of being proactive about the way you feel.
Okay. How does this play out? Is it something where you've got to continually, reset your view or feelings throughout the day, or is there a certain set, weekly or daily time, and then you're good to go, or all of the above?
Oh, it's definitely moment by moment as we go along. I've I've come to realize that almost everything is, just daily. The laundry comes back every day. Everyone has to eat every day. I have to align my perspective with what I believe every day. I have to exercise every day. All these things happen. I would love them all to be projects that I could check off my list. And none of them are ever going to be that. So that's another part of organizing my attitude, is realizing, no, I'm never actually going to be done with all of these. And I'm going to have to be okay with that.
So it's very much about having flexibility, not just in your time and your schedule, but also the way you adapt mentally and emotionally to the changes that have to be done in that schedule.
Right. Yeah, we're all trying to do this upfront work with organization, organizing the closets, getting the desk organized, that sort of thing. And that's all good. And we do it to kind of prevent or minimize bad things happening, try to get control of things. And we should, but organizing the attitude kind of takes it from the other tact. And when we're organizing our attitude, we're organizing how we're handling life when our plans don't work out. When the things go wrong, when people don't cooperate, when, life messes with us, then, we have to be able to handle adapting our plan to what's actually in front of us, instead of getting frustrated that, these other people and life isn't working according to the way we planned it out. We have to change so that we can adapt our plan and how we respond to people, rather than getting angry with them for not cooperating with our plans.
So say somebody has the feeling that they're in whack-a-mole mode and they want to know how to start taking steps towards having an organized attitude. What do you tell them?
I think the first step that I recommend is a brain dump. So that kind of doesn't seem related, but and that's a GTD thing. Mm-hmm. So a brain dump is just getting it all out onto paper. And so you just take everything that's in your head, everything that needs to be done. And that's around the house or at work or just anything that pops into your head, just write it down. And it includes things like, how do you feel about this, that, or the other thing? How are you? What are some responses that you have that you don't want to have? So it includes how you're feeling about things, what you want, what you feel like you should be doing but aren't, and just get that all out onto paper. So I actually recommend getting one of those just cheap spiral notebooks that are like 10 cents at back to school time.
Yeah.
And I've had women fill half of one of those. Just,
wow.
Give prompt. GTD has prompts, and I'd be really interested to see what the prompts are in the new edition where it's less business, because I kind of took those, and there are some home things in there, but over the years I've added more prompts like think about this, and just write down everything that comes to mind. And that's like a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. I think in GTD he said 2 hours, and that's the difference between mom at home with kids and sitting in an office. Is there are no doors to close and 2 hours altogether to think through something. So just put it out on the counter and do it for 3 weeks here and there as you can.
Yeah. So you're saying, it's probably not possible for most people to just sit and take 2 hours. It's going to be it's going to be more of a drawn out process, but that's okay.
Yeah. And I think it takes some of that time for things to come out. I find that as I write things down, it's like you uncover one layer and get that on. And then after a while, you realize, oh, there's another layer there. And you write that down. And then you realize, oh, there's another layer under that. And so it's kind of this uncovering process.
I want to take a quick break here to let you know that this podcast is supported by the Art of Charm podcast. The Art of Charm podcast is an iTunes top 50 podcast. It's packed with wisdom in the truest sense of the word, from many different topics, including how to create confidence, how to get people to like and trust you, networking, relationships, productivity, time management. And it's fun and funny and educational at the same time. It's personal growth without being boring. It's a show about truly leveling up your life and relationships, friendships, at work, at home, everywhere. And the show offers meaningful, fun, life-changing insights with a practical edge so that you can apply something right out of the box every show. You deserve an extraordinary life. Go to theartofcharmpodcast.com or find The Art of Charm in iTunes or Stitcher and start taking your life to the next level. So somebody's thinking, okay, well, I've thought about doing, a brain dump, and I've just never been able to devote the time to it. How do you get them to start? How do you convince them?
I tell them this is what I do when, I've done the big, huge brain dump lots of times. But even just anytime I start to feel a little bit crazy, then I just pull out another notebook and start jotting things down. And it's funny because so those are like mini brain dumps. Just, okay, my mind feels so cluttered. It's like a way to declutter your mind. That's one way I think about it, is you just kind of pull everything out. If you're going to organize a closet, you pull everything out and then only put back what belongs there. So the brain dump is just a way to, okay, my head feels cluttered and messed up. I'm just going to write it all down and then say, okay, I was thinking this, but I don't need to be doing this or worrying about it. I'd cross off as many as possible. And, it's a pretty cheap and easy therapy session. So it's pretty easy thing to convince people to do. And I have a free, it's a PDF download with just all the prompts that I've come up with over the years to get you thinking about what might be in your head that needs to come out. And so that's at simplifiedorganization.com/beyond.
Oh, that fits right with the show.
That fits. Yep. So,
and I'll put that link in the show notes too. So if you're driving or something and you don't want to have to remember that link, you can go back and grab that.
Yeah, that'll have the free download with the brain dump list. So
I assume that after you've done it once, or even continually done it, like say somebody does the 3-week version of a brain dump, and then once they've done that, they start maybe doing a weekly review. Does that get easier?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's like my brain dumps now are really more project oriented, or there's going to be like 1 or 2 things that are kind of getting under my skin or making me feel overwhelmed or crazy. And that's what the brain dump is then about. It's not about every single aspect of my entire life every time. It's more what's in my head making me feel crazy. And I think when you've never done it, you don't know, and it's good to just get it all out.
So that initial time, it's like, oh, my whole life is a mess. Let me get it all out.
Yeah.
But after you've done that, it's like, well, it's not as bad now. I've gotten some stuff organized. I'm doing better. It's just this one area that, this one closet, as an example, Okay, I gotcha. So then what about a weekly review? I know that you like to do those as well. What's your process for that?
My weekly review is mostly a time to go over the calendar. And that's in a way a little mini brain dump, looking at the calendar and saying, what does this remind me of? What do I need to put on the to-do list? And make sure that I'm ready for what's coming up. And I clear out my inboxes during the weekly review, like Evernote. Whenever I do anything in Evernote, everything just goes into an inbox in Evernote. So during the weekly review, I clear that out. And my task list, if I'm just entering things during the week, they're probably just landing in the inbox. And during the weekly review, I put them in the right place.
And I imagine that a weekly review, is less of a getting stuff out of your head as much as checking the list that you already have in place, your organizational process, just to kind of see, okay, what's coming up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. I do also keep a little list of like mottos or sayings or quotes, that just something that I can grab onto to remind myself like what I really believe about my work or about how to handle things. I like to keep a sheet on I have a clipboard that I have my paper stuff on. So I keep a little paper with me that has quotes that I like or things to remind me of what can help change my attitude around.
Actually, it sounds quite unique because I don't think that a lot of people keep motivational or inspirational or perspective-changing material like that with their task list or to-do list or calendar and all those other things. Why do you do that? Why do you think we should be doing that? Because I agree. I think that we should be doing that.
Well, one of the things that helps with is just having it right there. When you're feeling crazy or angry or frustrated, that's not the time where you're going to remember your motivation or your inspiration. So if I know that I have this place, I could just look at it again. It's like having a friend or someone remind you of what you need to be reminded of giving you a little pep talk. It's like my previous self that was, sitting calmly with her coffee is now giving my current self, which is frustrated in the moment, a little pep talk on, no, you can do this. Remember this. Remember this.
Oh, I like that. That's cool. What would hopefully future self say to current self right now? It's going to be okay. Trust me. Look at what we already wrote down.
That's right.
That's great.
You've felt this way before, and you'll get through it again.
Yeah. No, that's exactly it. That's great. I heard you mention Evernote, but also you're talking a lot about paper, and I'm wondering, what is this paper and digital approach that you're doing?
Yeah, it's definitely evolved over the years. I love to tweak systems. That's my favorite. I create them and then I continually tweak them. But I have an ebook called Paperless Home Organization. And in that, I go over dealing with email and a task list and a filing system, which is Evernote, digitally. And it was like 4 or 5 years ago or something, my husband gave me an iPad, and I thought, all right, I don't need paper anymore. I can carry everything with me. This is awesome. And I started searching around trying to find other women using digital things to manage their homes and their lives. And I just really found nothing. So I was like, no, it's got to be possible. And so I started just playing around and figuring it out. And so then I wrote an ebook to say, how I'd done it. And there's a lot of GTD stuff in there, just with the email hints and that sort of cleaning out your inboxes. But the digital side of things, it's nice because it's so convenient and you can search everything. And, my coffee would always spill on my papers. And, I tend to be more of a perfectionist, which doesn't really work with 5 kids. And so once I would write something down and, the fingerprints would get on it or something, I would want to reprint it because it was messed up. So if it's just digital, I don't have to worry about that. But then if it's all digital, then I, power up the laptop or the iPad or whatever. And, oh, look, I'm checking Pinterest instead of my to-do list. Or, oh, no, the internet is down. Now I have no access to any of my stuff. So I ended up, right now I use kind of a mix. Everything is stored on, digitally. and it all syncs together. So I have it on my laptop, or I sold the iPad and I just have a little iPod Touch. Actually, I don't even have a smartphone, just an iPod Touch with Wi-Fi and a laptop, and a clipboard where I keep a weekly list, like things that need to be done sometime this week, and the habits that I'm working on with little check marks for each day, and any events. It's kind of a mini calendar, out of the ordinary, out of the house things. I'll take a note, have a note on there. And then every day I make a little index card for my daily to-do list. And I'm pulling that information from my digital lists, and I'm still looking at my digital lists, but that's like my most important things. I write them down. And what I found was just the physical act of writing them down made such a huge difference than seeing them digitally or typing them. There was just something about the act of writing it out by hand that helped it like just get into my head in a different way and made it more likely to even be done, because it's just more front of mind than if I glanced at it on the screen somehow.
Do you feel like the digital, the strength of the digital tools is for archival purpose and, quick searching and things like that, but in the thinking and creating and the, I'm trying to think of what the best word would be here, the inception process of what needs to be done, that is better done in a tangible way?
Yeah, I think if you have to think through something, like the brain dump or just brainstorming about something, I think that there's just something different about the way paper and writing by hand and screens just affect our thinking process, and that doing it by hand just really helps with that thinking and creativity and getting what you're writing into your head. But I do really like the digital, not just the archive and being able to search through everything is amazing, but also just the way things can be organized so quickly and efficiently and put in the right place, where keeping papers organized is, we talk about whack-a-mole.
Yeah, it's permanent in a sense, but if you start that way so are you digitizing stuff that you've handwritten?
I do that, yeah.
Okay.
So I take a little scan with my iPod and get it into Evernote.
Nice. See, this is the kind of compromise in the true sense of the word, the good version of the word, where you take the strengths of one or more different things, and then those strengths cover over the weaknesses of the other thing.
Yeah.
So that's really cool. I love that you're doing that hybrid perspective approach.
Yeah, I just started that about a year and a half ago, and there was a little bit of, identity crisis. I made a page printout for my weekly list, and I took it to we were going to have a play day with friends. I took it and I said, I'm thinking about a paper week list, but I wrote paperless home organization. Can I do that? You should do whatever works.
Yeah.
Right. That is what I should do.
So if somebody, so let me ask you this question then. If somebody is purely digital but feels like that's not necessarily working, or vice versa, they're purely paper, how would you suggest to those two groups, hey, you should try this other aspect to augment your approach?
Yeah, I don't think that you should feel like you have to pick between them and you can only do one or the other. Although the worst of both worlds would be to try to have everything in both places all the time, because then you never know. The point is to know where something is.
Right.
So, if it's someone who's almost all paper and is kind of afraid of digital or thinks maybe they should but they don't know how, I think I would just start by introducing them to Evernote and say, you can store things when you're done with them here. And then they're searching. You don't have to keep the shelves of binder papers or whatever.
Yeah. So you'd do the thing where you're like, here, look, here's your paper that you've written. Now I'm going to take my iPod Touch and I'm going to take a picture of that and import it into Evernote. Now, here, take my iPod, type in, and you know, tell them to type in one of the words that's obvious on the paper there, and boom, it'll show up because of the OCR.
Yeah,
And
that's
then,
so awesome.
Yeah, that'll blow their mind a little bit. They'll be like, oh, so I don't have to search through all my papers to find this specific thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
And, you know, we're all using email.
True.
And, you know, so just having some tools to keep that organized and under control so you don't have, you know, 2,000 emails in your inbox. That's big. Whether your to-do list is paper or not, just having some email tools is also important.
Yeah. What's your favorite email tool? What's the one that's made the most impact for you?
I just use Gmail, and I use the stars. And
are you using just the one, or are you doing different color? I know that at some point they had different colors and
yeah, I have five different ones.
Okay.
So my inbox is never 0, but you know, I try to keep it less than 10, where I can see every email on one screen without scrolling down.
Oh yeah. And
so that some things stay there because I can't deal with everything right away. So if I read it and I know what I need to do with it, you know, if it's like, this is related to my blog, or this one's personal, this one's just information I need to get into my system, this is a bill to pay, you know, those all have different colored stars.
Right. So
then when I'm in processing mode, I can go do like all of one kind and kind of be in the same mode. But I don't even use the tabbed Gmail. It's everything in one place. So
yeah, okay, gotcha. So somebody then going back to like somebody who's just all digital, how do you convince them that they should try using some paper? What's the benefit of moving from all digital to incorporating some paper into your life?
Well, you know, if all digital is working, then I wouldn't try to convince them. You know, it's kind of
True.
If something is working for you, then don't go looking for a better way. But it's if something's not working, then, well, let's try this. And so my daily index card would be the first thing I would recommend. Just try this. Because usually what people say is, I have it all digital, but I open up whatever and just get on social media or my email, and I end up, you know, wasting more time when I should have just been glancing at a list. I'm like, well, that doesn't mean you have to keep all your lists on paper. It means you need to keep what you want in front of your face today on paper. And so I use OmniFocus for all my tasks, but then I can open that up and every morning write down, I'll put a video on that Beyond website page because I have a video showing my index card, but I have different columns on it. I put the day at the top and kind of 3 different areas and some 1 or 2 things that I want to do in each area, in each column. So one column's, you know, homeschooling today, and the other is house, and then the other is my personal projects. And having a small to-do list where that index card just kind of physically and visually limits you. It says, remember, you can't do everything that's filed here in OmniFocus today.
Yeah.
Pick 2.
I've been there.
Pick 2.
That's good.
As my friend says, make hard choices.
Yeah. Well, how do you decide what are those things that make it onto the card today?
That's really been a learning process, as I've been using the index card for about 1.5 years now. And it's kind of like a skill that takes practice to get better at, just knowing how to pick the right things. And so it's really just trying to choose and making a call, and then learning at the end of the day that you made the wrong call and trying to do better the next day. So it's I try to think, you know, one of those attitude things. I try to think about all the organization stuff as practice and not as, oh, you blew it, that's it, fail.
You fell off the wagon.
Yep. It's like, okay, this is all practice. And so practice, it means repeating and trying again and figuring out what didn't work, why didn't that work, and let's try it again. And, people's needs are always changing. What's needed at a certain time is always changing. So even what's working now might not work next year. There are some principles that always apply, but then kind of the application and what you're doing to use those principles kind of changes as you're doing different projects, or for me, as my kids get older or more numerous.
Well, Mystie, it's been awesome to talk with you, and I would love to have you share, where can everybody go grab the different things that we've talked about?
I will have them all up on simplifiedorganization.com/beyond. And simplifiedorganization.com is my blog where I write about this sort of thing. So,
awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Mystie, thank you so much for being on the show. It's been an eye-opener.
Thank you for having me. It's been fun.
So I think you need an attitude adjustment. Actually, what I think you really need is to organize your attitude. Again, I hope you enjoyed this episode, this conversation. Make sure to check out Mystie Winckler's site over at simplifiedorganization.com/beyond. She's actually created a nice little landing page for you. And also, don't forget to check out the supporters of this episode, the Art of Charm podcast, which you can find at theartofcharmpodcast.com, or search for The Art of Charm in iTunes or Stitcher. Let them know I sent you. If you've enjoyed this episode, let me know. Go to beyondthetodolist.com/iTunes. Leave a rating or a review. Thanks again for listening. I'll see you next episode. Beyond the To-Do List is a proud member of the Noodle.mx Network. Find more of our award-winning and award-nominated podcasts to make you think, laugh, and succeed at Noodle.mx. Learn how to podcast. Theorize over the TV shows Once Upon a Time in Wonderland, and Under the Dome. Laugh with our clean comedy, delve into science fiction and philosophy, learn critical thinking from movie reviews, and more at Noodle.mx.